Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining our season finale of Campfire Talks. Campfire Talks is an ongoing series hosted by the Camp Network team, and we are all volunteers, part of the Black Rock City community. Tonight's or this evening's topic is fun and shenanigans, and just how can we have more fun out there on the playa? Not that we don't have a lot of fun, but sometimes as camp leads, we need a little bit more advice and help with all of this. So I want to say hello to Level. Level is joining us for the first part of our Campfire Talk today. And go ahead and take it away, Level. So say hi.
Hi, everyone. Level here. I am the Associate Director of Placement in Black Rock City. I know that we are all really far along in planning. The Playa is just a couple months away. So just wanted to first thank everyone for showing up today, and also just acknowledge the path that we've all been going on since Black Rock City 2022. And with the Campfire Talks, there was a debrief about how 2022 went after a couple years off. We talked about access and radical inclusion. There was an Ask a Placer session to get all your questions to my team. Talked about leadership burnout, how to prevent that. Talked about hubs, talked about environmental sustainability, talked about striking and making that go well. So there's been a lot of topics covered. So I really want to thank this volunteer team for all the work that they've put in over the past year to make all this happen. I think collectively there's been hundreds of people who've shown up. Some of you have probably shown up multiple times. So just thank you, thank you, thank you. This is a community effort. Burning Man is all about community and working together, participating together. And so really want to appreciate that. I'm really excited about what we're all going to be able to do this year. You all received, if you were a camp lead, your placement announcements over the last couple months. We are definitely trying our best to get information out sooner so that people can plan better. There's still more information to come. You can expect us to send out who your neighbors are in a few weeks. And, there's a lot of things happening. So anyway, I don't want to take up too much airtime. Did want to just acknowledge all the hard work that you all are doing. And we're also planning, just a heads up, community collaborators meeting. If anyone was with us during the pandemic period, Burning Man as an org, we pulled together kind of all the mutant vehicle owners, artists, and theme camp organizers to try to give some important announcements. So we'll be doing that again. So just stay tuned. We don't have all the details figured out yet, but I do hope all of you can attend that. And yeah, if you are ever interested in supporting any of this work, supporting each other, just know that we are always looking for volunteers. This is fueled by yourselves, the camp support team, but also people that are going to be joining soon. So, and we're also, just FYI, planning for the camp symposium for 2024 already. So if you are interested, just reach out. campsupport@burningman.org is the email. And anyway, thank you all. I look forward to seeing you on Playa. The placement team, all our placers are looking forward to giving you all dusty hugs again. So we'll see you out there. And I look forward to this talk. Let's figure out how to have more fun.
Thanks, Level. And I just want to give big kudos to Level and the placement team. Just such hard work and just really responsive to all of the feedback from theme camp organizers. And it just feels like I already see a comment in here. Placement went really well this year. I can't agree more. So thanks so much for the endless hours that you give so that we can go out there and just have a great time. So a big appreciation to you and the entire placement team. So yeah. Those of you who are joining, please introduce yourselves in the chat. Let us know who you are, what your camp, if you have a camp, and maybe a few things that you'd like to learn from today's talk. We're glad that you're here. So once again, today's talk is about fun. We're going to be talking about how to find that big kid in us, maybe even the little kid in us as well. And, some creative and playful ideas, shenanigans, spontaneous, ideas and just, let's just have some fun. It's a great way to finish out the season. So before we get started, we have some meeting guidelines that we'd like you to follow. So if you could put that slide up, Puppy, of the meeting guidelines. And meanwhile, once again, please put your name in the chat. Please connect in the chat. The chat's a great place for us all to connect. And yeah, here we go. Great, fantastic. So you're all muted, and it says please mute your mic if you're not speaking, but you're all just generally muted here. And please be respectful in your participation in the chat. Share the air, be present, speak from your own experience. And if you have any questions or comments that you'd like to share, please put them in the chat. We have 2 chat moderators today. We have Luis and Regular, and they're going to be organizing any questions and comments, and we'll be looking at those at the end of the talk, after our panelists, I should say, after our panelists have done their presentations. So speaking of panelists, we have 3 great panelists for you today. And Puppy, if you can just spotlight me at this point, I think that would be good. Great, thanks. And I also want to just give kudos to our producer, Larry. Larry, you want to wave your hand? Producer means that this person put this whole thing together, and it's a lot of work, and just very much appreciate your doing everything. So let's get started. So we're going to start our discussion with a poll. So you're going to be seeing soon a poll come up. There it is. So go ahead, read the poll, answer the questions, and we'll get the results shortly. Did you create any type of spontaneous performance art? Have you found ways to play pretend or be playfully creative with your campmates? Are you interested in starting some shenanigans on the playa this year? So let me know when those results come in. All right. So did you create any spontaneous performance? 41% yes, 59% no, not bad. Have you found ways to play pretend or be playfully creative? 70% yes, fantastic. And are you interested in shenanigans this year? 100% absolutely yes, fantastic. All right, thanks very much for your participation. So I'm going to go ahead and get things started, introducing our first panelist. Our first panelist is Kate Houston, earner since 1998, past NV88 BRC Airport Prime Minister, camp lead for many, many theme camps over the years, and also known as the Rockstar Librarian. Yay, bringing the Rockstar Librarian Music Guide to Black Rock City citizens since 2005. Past real-life librarian, and now a dating and love coach for powerhouse women, all about play, curiosity, wonder, and creativity in all of its forms in and outside Black Rock City to inspire deeper vulnerability, intimacy, and connection between people around. So
thank you so much. Oh, so fun. I really love it. I think one of my favorite parts about spontaneous play, and well, I use play and performance art as the same, and some people might feel that performance art has this deep meaning. It's really just play. It's just really play, spontaneous play. And that when we're doing that, we really are being intimate and connected and offering an opportunity to connect to others in a different way. That's an access point than just walking by somebody. It could be anything from putting on you decide to act for the day a certain type of character, and you just play the part, do the accent or voice, and then it interacts and brings people to you and as you pass them. So I really like to look at the simple ways that you can do this. I think a lot of people think performance art is having to be a big production or planned out thing, and it sometimes can be, and some of the best can be very simple. And I just really like the idea of being playful anyway. And we're in a 7-mile sandbox, so let's be preschoolers in that sandbox together and just find ways to play. And just like when you think about when you were a preschooler, somebody just comes up to you and says, hey, do you want to work in my store with me? And then you create a store on the playground. So it's sort of the same thing, where you get to relax into it being much easier than maybe some of us have thought, or we worry if we're getting it wrong, but we're not. Like, there's lots of ways to play. So I can talk about my own experiences and some of the things I've experienced out there that I think are really fun examples of that, of play and absurdity and just silliness that really surprised me and were very simple. I remember one of my favorite, I think we were talking about this when we were first talking about this event, was I walked around, I was on the Esplanade walking that, and just on the inner Playa, 5 feet from official Esplanade Road, there was a box. It was like a wooden box, kind of, crate. And somebody was standing on it. They go, come here, 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 come here. I'm like, okay, go up to them. Yeah. Says, are you interested in new perspective? Sure. They get down on the box. They stand up here. Look around. It was literally like, maybe 18 inches or 2 feet from the ground, but it had lifted you up to see the playa differently. And then they say, yeah, you stay here and you until you call somebody else in and do the same thing. So I have no idea how many iterations or who the first person was or who bought the box. Maybe somebody at one of the camps on Esplanade watching, couldn't tell you, but it was delightful to be up there for a while, to look around, take in the different perspective, and then playfully bring somebody else in. And it was a crate and an idea. So it can be something as simple as that, and then you can let it live on its own legs. It's not like you have to manage it. And trust that people will be playful with it. I thought that was one of my favorite simple ideas that you could truly run with. And depending on how extroverted you are, you can choose to do something bigger, or you can choose to do something like that, where it really has its own run and it inspires people to participate. Some of the other things you might have seen out there too are when people, as a group, a small group or a camp, get together and decide to do something, and they kind of wander about. I think one of my favorite ones was seeing all these people dressed as cows, and like 4 or 5 burners were like dressed as the cowpokes and corralling them, and the cows were bumping into everybody and bumped into me because they're cows, and they just wandered the open playa for I don't know how many hours. But it was ridiculous, and I was like, what's the point? There isn't one. It's okay. It's just silly and funny, and how weird. And I just kept thinking, this whole set of people had conversations, and like there was buy-in for months to this idea that it panned out. I wanted to know the conversation they were having and how much fun they were just having in the planning of it, right? So there's a lot you can do that's just, whether it's with a camp or whether it's on your own like that, that really can set the direction of fun and play. And anytime you're volunteering, you can think of fun and playful ways to lighten the experience and make the time pass. When I was working customs or prime minister for the airport, there's a lot of actual duties, but then there's downtime. And so we found ways to be playful and to play a part and take on an acting role, as it were, and interact with people in a fun and different way that really allowed people to have a different experience and know that they're entering, especially customs, when that's a like gate, right? That's the greeters, and you greet everybody. And if you're in a playing that part, a part that you've created, then they know they're automatically entering something they've never experienced before. And definitely at the airport, you may see people arriving that are new to Burning Man, right? That there's a variety of things. I've met a lot of different people coming through there that were new, and this was their opportunity to meet. And they knew something was different the minute they arrived. But I think it's a nice way to re-enliven things if you've been to Burning Man many, many years too. And oh, that walking insect, doesn't excite you anymore. And oh, there's that flaming boat again. And like this is a way you can create the aliveness of things after maybe you've been desensitized by the uniqueness of Burning Man. And that's what I really invite you to do. Maybe what you do is you create something before Burning Man, you plan it out, or when you arrive, you see you have certain neighbors and you can create a parade, or you could create an event or an activity, or you could be a blockade for the road of people and have some people do absurd things to be able to pass. I mean, it doesn't have to make any sense at all. And you just have to bring people together to say, hey, do you want to create something fun together? And, we're in the sandbox together. If they're not on a task or having to be doing something specific, generally people will say, sure. That's the nice thing. And we get to break down the barriers of perceived politeness and not wanting to offend. I think we still bring some of that because we're still bringing in, human condition. That if you're bringing in and showing a playful side, people will feel that it's okay to interact, that you're not going to be offended, or you're not on a mission, or you don't have something else going on, right? So, and sometimes you can be inspired by a costume. Maybe there's a costume you bring. I have an old 1960s stewardess costume that I've worn for years. And then all of a sudden I went to Ashram Galactica in the costume after a airport shift volunteering, and I was tired, and I pretended like I was a flight crew. And this was our new hotel that they'd given us. And I was really confused by this new hotel, and I didn't know where my room was. I just played this part. And then I met somebody who worked for Mundane Airlines. They actually do this whole thing where they put on events at an airline, an empty hangar, and an old vintage airplane. So I got to learn about that. I would never have met that person had I not been, playing the part, and people felt like they could approach me. So I think playfulness is one of those things that makes us approachable, and we still bring some default worlds, humanness of not wanting to offend or cross into personal boundary space. So for me, it's a doorway to intimacy, to saying, yeah, come meet me, come say hi to me, it's okay. And I think it takes down a lot of barriers where somebody might not approach somebody, may approach somebody if they see them being playful or inviting them into play. So I think that's kind of, I can, like, if there's questions, I know we had lots of conversations on our call.
Yeah, I would just add that, as a camp organizer, and it seems kind of funny that we have to kind of talk about like how to be playful, but I think sometimes as a camp organizer, there's so much to do to get there. And then we get there, and then there's like so much to do when we get there. And we might forget, like, why are we here? And
Yeah.
I think everything that you're sharing is just a reminder of, yes, we're all there to share the sandbox. I love that idea. And maybe our participants, if you guys have any other stories you just want to share in the chat, it might be nice because it gives us all ideas. That's the thing that I like, is that, when I'm out there, I always see things. I'm like, oh, I'm going to remember that idea for next year. I never remember.
Yeah. I had a girlfriend once too. She decided to she created out of a little piece of wood, like Pro Max size fake phone. And she painted on fake phone stuff. And she was taking selfies, and she'd have people take pictures of her with this fake piece of wood painted on. And that was enough for her to have a lot of interactivity with people. So, there could be a prop that you have that you end up using regularly as a intermediary to bring people together too. So I just invite people to just try some stuff, play it out, ask a couple campmates to join in, make a samba line as you're bringing all the poles in. I don't know. You don't have to make it work, right? And not everybody is that way. So remember that some people are not, that's not their burn.
Mm-hmm.
The performance art, the play, the extroversion. So and some people are ops, and that's their thing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's why consent's important when you're playful or you're doing pranks or whatever, is that you just make sure, like, hey, would you like to participate? Or I'd love to include you in this. Come on in and see if they're in the mood.
That was
for-
actually one of my questions, is just, talking about consent, because sometimes some of our antics push some boundaries. And it's just, very important to be mindful that sometimes people aren't in the mood to play.
Yeah.
Something might be going on. And again, it's not always easy to be out there, and just being sure that you're inclusive, including if people don't want to participate. I've had situations where people have approached me and touched me, and then when I didn't want to be like squeeze and stuff, then they were really offended. Like, well, this is Burning Man. You're supposed to like want to do everything. And it's like, no, I really don't want you touching me. So I just think it's a really important point, because, again, it feels like an anything goes kind of environment.
Yeah, and I think the absurdity and the cacophony, which is what Burning Man birthed from, there is a space for being a bit of a hassle. Like, that's the idea. Sometimes the play can be, it's a bit of a hassle, but it's not like disruptive to a deeper level, right? You're not, like, I think one of the things we did, and we had a person that we were playing with a lot, that we had consent to play back and forth between our camps and friends, and we would hide like a little alarm randomly to go off, because when they walked by at a certain, but they couldn't find it, just annoying them enough. But we also know the tolerance level that we were playing at, back and forth. But we wouldn't have done that for somebody who really needed sleep. Like, we would be mindful of what their duties are and what their needs are, to like, okay, or only do it during a certain point, and then, okay, we're going to tell you where it's at. But it was just fun, or it's a ventriloquist thing, like, because they would get it, right? You have to kind of know your audience too, in the sense of if you're doing individual or smaller things. But really, I think the spontaneous piece is what makes it fun out there, the absurdity, the people playing in different parts, and not just being, like what you'd be in the default world. You have an opportunity to try on a different hat.
Yeah. And do you have a muse or an inspiration? So you're pulling all these ideas. Is there something that you find inspires you to create these ideas?
I don't know. Because I always think, wow, it'd be so fun if that happened. Well, I'll do it. Like, I do a pop-up sing-along. I walk around with a flip chart and a thing, and I walk up into a camp, and they kind of seem quiet, and there's some people sitting like, hey, would you like to have a sudden pop-up sing-along? And I just set it up, and because I used to be a camp counselor, summer camp, so you can teach music to anybody, really. And so we just I do some fun songs that are like rock and roll songs, and it'd be a sudden 20-minute thing, and then I'd be off and I'd go somewhere else. So it doesn't have to be
as well,
yeah,
having that immediacy. And I think it takes sometimes a day or two, because, on the Grand Playa, immediacy can be difficult, and sometimes you can get kind of grumpy. And someone wrote in the chat, maybe the people who aren't feeling playful really need it the most. And it's just like, how can you still approach people and just help people warm up a little bit to this completely fun opportunity to be.
And I just want to say, play courageously. That's what we did when we were kids. That's how we learned. We trusted, we scabbed our knees. We played courageously. So that's how we created meaning and experiences and memories. Right? Is that stuff. So yeah. So many fun ways to do it.
So there's something called poop, performance out of place. Do you want to talk about that?
I'm trying to remember what we were thinking about that. I think that it wasn't so much that it wasn't so much something to be forewarned against, but it was more like be able to do something spontaneous. You could be in the middle of the road or at the porta potty, waiting with everybody, and you just get an idea of how to make it fun for a minute. That's, I guess, performance is really in place everywhere, but I just thought poop was a funny acronym to make performance. Doesn't have to happen on a stage. Let's put it that way, right? It can be in a conversation. It can be like, if you have a prop, like we said, bring it, and performance is everywhere, unless somebody doesn't want to consent to that, obviously, right? There's that. But I mean, that's where you kind of have to read the spaces and know And sometimes the absurdity of the juxtaposition is a moment and a lesson and a human condition opportunity to connect with people
Absolutely.
too. So I love it. I think it's really funny. But poop, bring poop on, bring
That's
it.
right. That's right. Well, thanks so much for all
Thank
your
you so much.
ideas and enthusiasm. And again, all of our participants, there are a few stories coming in the chat. So just again, welcome you to connect in the chat, share your stories, inspire each other. Because again, that's what we're doing here. We're trying to connect, inspire, share, learn. So yeah, it's great. It's really great to read some of these ideas. All right, so now we're going to move on to our next panelist. We will be coming back with all the panelists after all the panelists present. But for now, we're going to move on. So thank you, Rockstar Librarian, for all of that great information. And now we're coming to Half Stash, who is currently full stash, but he will be half stash. And he is a longtime burner, lifelong prankster, insecure about writing bios. I totally get it. But living a life of love and laughter in Lake Tahoe. Hates the word mirror and is in love with a purple centaur. Is that how I pronounce that? Centaur? Yes.
That's how you pronounced it, so it's perfect.
Okay. Sounded weird when it came out of my mouth. All right, so I think you have some slides that Puppy's going to share.
Definitely. I can't believe that I'm following such a articulate person, and I just have to admit and apologize to everybody that this isn't my cup of tea. I'm way out of my league, and I'm probably just going to get my face out of the screen so I don't look at my 17 necks. But let's just get to it. I'm John, and we're rocking. These are the 10 principles. We all know them and love them. They're awesome. We try to live outside of them, but the most important ones aren't even really visible. If you want to go to the next slide. Those are the important ones. Those are the ones that really resonate with us. Blah, 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 blah. Why are they at the bottom? Doesn't make any sense to me. Next slide, please. Have you ever played chicken as a kid? It's a pretty crazy game, but I truly love it. Let me get rid of my necks. Bam! The first time I was out at Burning Man, I was out on an adventure, taking one of my first Playa rides, cruising along, getting my mind blown. I wasn't paying much attention. Someone targeted me for a game of chicken, and I had no idea. He was barreling towards me. At the last second, I swerved for my life, and we made eye contacts, and he yelled at me, "Chicken!" And I was hooked for life, and I've been coming back ever since. If you want to go to the next slide. Have you ever looked up chicken bicycle game on the internet? Well, there you go. You're welcome. Next slide. That is amazing. And remember, small things, big impact. That thing is incredible. No flame effects, not millions of dollars thrown at it. It's just an incredible piece of art that'll make everybody laugh every time they see it. Next slide, please. Shenanigans. What a dumb word, but it's a lot of fun. The burn has given me some of the most incredible friends and family. I'm truly thankful for all the innovators in our crew. If you want to go to the next slide. That's playa fishing. Yep, we invented it. Next slide, please. Now it's playa fishing, moop casting, hippie fishing. It's the same game, same amazing interactions. But don't forget to reward the playa guardians that fell for the joke. A drink, a hug. Thank them by laughing at their expense. It's the only way to go. Next slide, please. These cats right here, this is Bloomers and Sobrightness. They met on Playa, and shenanigans pay off. They have an incredible marriage, very inspirational, awesome children, and that says a lot. I hate kids. Next slide, please. I'm in love with the purple centaur. That's Mrs. Half Stash. I'm the fat mantis. Next slide. If you want to run that. So we started out as mutant bikes and then mutant vehicles. We turned this tandem bike into a mythical beast. And the execution came out great and we truly love it. It's really the most fun I've had on Playa since I've been out there. It is just great. So I'm just going to show you a bunch of Centaur pictures and talk about them. It's going to be awesome. Next slide, please. It creates amazing interactions with strangers. My wife is amazing. This was her first year and she brought that beast out and it was just an incredible project. She made different legs so she can be during daytime. She can have normal legs or furry legs. Next slide. We know people would be curious what's under the tail, so we had to give them everything they wanted. Next slide. The interactions were always the goal, so we made sure we brought out a camera that prints and we gifted the pictures out. It was just a fun way to put a little sticker on the site that we had, but it was also a really cool experience to hand out a true picture at the time. Next slide. Sure, fisting a centaur with a tutu, why not? Yes, please. Next. Sure, more fisting, let's do it. This is Kirk. He's amazing. We centaured him out, or it's a Kirktar, so we had to give it to him as well. Next. Survey says, yes, people also want to fist a male centaur. Bunch of sickos out there. Next, please. Deep Playa joy. Next. I can't get enough of this stuff. It's just too easy. That is a poop lollipop, and it's fantastic that he found his prize. Next, please. After lots of talks, my friends and crazy folks, we decided to build a theme camp last year. It was our first go at a theme camp, so we wanted to give back to the community. We put together a super squad, and I apologize for messing with everybody. Well, I'm really not that sorry, actually. Next slide. That's Super Squad. Love them to death. Pranksters in the Pines is born year 1 last year. Next. What we did is we attempted a forest theme with pranks as our focus. This picture is taken from our tower. We had a fake stream throughout our camp. If you touched it, you got soaked by a bucket of water or a squirt gun. Absolutely nobody was safe in camp. It wasn't just for the community. It was everybody involved, and it was really a blast. Next slide, please. Yeah, I know, that's a pathetic forest, but it was enough to scare some people while we were hiding inside of those trees. And if you look close enough, you see people kind of walking towards that janky bridge. It's just some pallets and a plank. They're scared of somebody hiding, that's for sure. We had some warning signs around, but by default, they were too small to read, so it really wasn't a fair warning. Next slide. This is our frontage. That's the sound cabin, mutant vehicle in the background, providing some sound, which is awesome. That's the Dunkaroo. I'll get into that next, if you want to go next slide. A little Dunkaroo history. We all know it and love it. You're welcome. Yep, we invented that as well. This is the primitive years. This was taken from 1923. It's been a ritual passed down from generations. Next slide. This is the current version. Basically, it happens like this. You go down for 10 seconds as you're getting spanked, with consent, of course, in a tub of ice cold water. You take your head out of ice cold water, you get smacked in the face by your partner or us, and then you take a shot and hug and depart. It's a fantastic way to cool off. We've been refining it over 100 years and everybody's been copying it, but this is truly the innovators right here. Next slide. This is Bling. What a camp MVP. This guy was awesome. He's putting out the vibe, providing shade and mist, luring everybody in from the street for the Dunkaroo. Next slide. The Hulkster always comes prepared. Decommodification, I apologize, but that's just too easy. Next, please. Of course, we made some whoopee cushions. We invented those as well. Super Squad. Next, please. We're excited about next year, or this year, I should say. It's going to be our second attempt at failure. Come find us, or better yet, we'll probably find you. I apologize for all of our pranks. Usually they're harmless unless I'm being a dickhead that day. Next. I just had to put one last picture up with pranksters because I love them. I want to thank them and thank you guys. And that's my cheesy 30-second bit of fame right there. That's my whole little shtick.
Thanks so much. I have a question for you though.
Please.
What is your inspiration? I mean, you have so many things going on here. You know, from the centaur to the with the lollipop, whatever was inside there, whatever you called it. What's your inspiration? Is it, I mean,
people. I still really I really love the interaction with human beings. I really love persons, if you will. People kind of are scary when it's in the masses, but really when you get individual conversations and interactions, it's fantastic, inside and outside of Burning Man. When you go to Burning Man, you can really open the doors to your imagination, and everybody's so inviting for that. So it makes it much easier to just go for it. You know, any wild idea is acceptable out there, and it's fantastic. It really is a beautiful place, and I wish it was worldwide.
thank you so much for sharing all that. Where are you placed this year, by the way? Just, I know that we all want to come by and get pranked.
There's no chance I'm telling you my address, but if you guys want to come, it is a fantastic address. Come find us, please do.
Oh, you prankster, you. Well, that's fantastic. And that centaur is amazing.
It's a lot of fun.
How long did it take you to build that?
My wife is amazing, so she completed that in just a couple of weeks, to be honest.
No way. Okay.
Yeah, we started that in August, and she finished by the burn. So she's definitely a special individual as far as crafting or the mechanics. But it was quick. The Mantis bike, I did that, and I'm a hack, and that took only a couple of weeks. There's no shame in hot glue and duct tape. You know, just have some fun with it and get some costumes going. We you know, I started with a half stash, and then it blossomed into rocking the theme camp. So
well, thanks so much for your inspiration. I'm so inspired by what you've shared. And you know, that again, the common theme is simplicity. And I love how you say, you know, your mutant bike, you know, not $1 million mutant vehicle, you know, just so it just goes to show. I mean, lots of us, you know, want to do the big projects, and that's awesome. But again, it doesn't need to be big. We can do things simple. The tarp river is brilliant. So yeah, thanks for sharing all that, and just again feel really inspired with everything that you shared. So thanks for being with us.
thank you, my pleasure.
Hey, fantastic. All right, so now we're going to move on to our next panelist. And again, if you have any questions, participants, if you have any questions, please put them in the chat. We're after the panelists have done each of their individual presentations, we're going to have time for some additional questions, your questions. So would love to see those. So our next panelist, here we have Lonnie Chiota, and she has been a burner since 2006. Welcome, so glad you're here. She is affiliated with folks from the OG Illuminati community back in the day, and she's been a joyful kid among the children of chaos since 2013. In the default world, she is a professor in the Department of Psychology at Arizona State University, where she conducts experiments with humans to learn about positive emotions, emotion regulation, and roles emotion can play in behavior change. So take it away, Lonnie.
All right, thanks so much, Peta. I'm gonna put my screens up, so if you guys will give me just a second and then let me know if it looks okay, that'd be super helpful. Right, there's that. All right, can everybody see it okay?
Yep.
Excellent, thanks. All right. So as Peter mentioned, I'm an academic. In the default world, that is my day job. Of course, my day job involves fucking with people, so that's kind of great, right? I really get paid to put people in weird situations and poke at them and see what they do. But it is fundamentally coming from a science perspective, and because there's not a whole lot of us burners out there, I end up being, for a number of reasons, kind of an ambassador for Burning Man. And people ask me all the time, once I explain to them that it's not the same thing as Coachella, people ask me all the time, so what do you love about it? And there are so many things. I love the extraordinary art, both physical and performance, and the scale. And I love the awe, and I love the community, and I love the safety. But when it comes down to it, and I'm telling one story that explains what I love so much about Burning Man, it's not about any of those. It is a story from one of the first times I went. I think it might have been the first. And buried out in the desert was that head. And a friend of mine, Gadget Newborn, now New Blanc, I don't know if any of you know him, was riding out one day. That is not a picture of him. That's just a picture I pulled from the interwebs. Comes back to camp, grabs a piece of PVC pipe and a couple towels and some duct tape, and starts duct taping the towels around the ends of the PVC pipe, and rides back out there with this and starts cleaning its ears, right? That to me is the ultimate Burning Man. It didn't cost a lot of money. It didn't take a lot of preparation. It was not elaborate or expensive. It just was this idea that popped into his head and translated into something really fun for everybody to watch. So I'm going to focus a little bit on the science of what that state is. And I'm not going to end it with a bunch of prescriptions. I'm going to keep it light. I'm going to keep it fun. And I'm not going to tell you what to do with this information. I'm just going to put it out there and see what it sparks, and hope that it leads to some ideas about what it even means to be in a mindset that is fun on the playa. And the way that I'm going to start that is by asking you to do something. So I'm going to show you a game. If you've ever seen this game before and you already know the answer, I'll ask you to be quiet, but I'm going to give you, I think 45 seconds to see if you can solve this problem, to figure this puzzle out. And then just maybe unmute really, really quickly, or just type into the chat if you think you know what the answer is. Okay, so here's what it is. You have these three items. You got a box of matches, you got a bunch of push pins, and you got a candle. And your job is to get the candle onto a wall or a cork board, if you don't want to destroy your wall, using only those items and nothing else. Go. All right. Anybody think you got it? Let me take a look at the chat. All right. So I am seeing, I'm not going to try to read all these because there's so many of them, but yes, several people have got the right idea. Great job for those of you who figured it out. Great job of those of you who tried, right? Because that is where the fun comes from, is trying to figure out how to solve this problem. This is the accepted solution to the problem, right? This is actually a psychology test. I use the term game specifically, but it is called a test of creativity that's used in the psychology literature. It was first developed by a researcher named Dunker and published in 1945. And yeah, the idea is to dump whatever's in the box out of the box. It doesn't even matter what it is. Sometimes it's a box of matches, sometimes it's a box of tacks. Irrelevant, because you're going to dump them out anyway. Use the tacks to pin the box to the wall. Use the matches to light the candle. Drip some wax in there and stick it down. problem solved. What solving the problem requires is getting over something that's called functional fixedness. This is the tendency that we all have to think of and use objects for the purpose for which they were intended, rather than in some other completely random but entirely appropriate way. So we use this all the time in psychology. Business schools use it a lot in research as a test of creative ingenuity in problem solving. Now, it turns out that there's a bunch of stuff that you can do to increase the likelihood that people will solve this problem. The first is to introduce the problem a little bit differently. It's really simple. You just dump whatever was in the box out of the box. Well, now it's not a box that's holding matches or tacks or whatever. It is just this box that is sitting there to do whatever you want with, right? So you remove some of the context that gives cues about what you're supposed to do with each of these things. Another quite efficient technique is to make people laugh. So this is research by Alice Eisen, and it's since been replicated by a bunch of folks. Watching a short comedy film before doing the task actually increases the likelihood that people will succeed. Right? We'll figure this out and break the links about what the box is supposed to be. And we'll talk about the connection between humor and creativity in a second. The third thing, this is really interesting. This is a whole line of research by Bill Maddox and Adam Galinsky, finds that substantive cross-cultural experience and even briefer multicultural learning increases the likelihood that people will solve the task. And by substantive, I'm not talking about going and, going to India and, visiting the big sites with a whole bunch of other people from where you come from and being talked at by a tour guide, right? And then going to your nice hotel and then going to McDonald's and going home. It's really having substantive experience with another culture that involves actually understanding not that there are differences, but why there are differences and what those differences in behavior and physical structure and customs mean in the context of that other culture. And just having that experience seems to lend itself to thinking about things differently. My primary body of research, Peter mentioned earlier, is on positive emotions. And actually this year, we're about to submit this for the book, but I'm going to be giving a talk on awe, which is one of my primary areas of research. I think we're planning to do this on Tuesday night out there. So keep a look. Hopefully that will turn up in the book. But another emotion that I really enjoy, we call amusement. And this has been defined as an emotion state that facilitates physical and cognitive play, right? There's a lot that we know about this at this point, still a lot that we don't, right? There's actually a facial expression that you can see here, both on the human and on the elephant. It shows up in very, very young infants. It shows up in people all over the world. It's recognized by people all over the world. It shows up in primates when they want to play, right? It's very, very consistent that way. There are vocalizations that both adults and children make. Laughter is actually a form of playful sound in humans, but also in some other species have essentially an analog of laughter that communicates this affective state. And we're starting to learn a little bit about how our minds are different when we're experiencing amusement or humor. So by the time we reach adulthood, a lot of this state comes from comedy, right? And laughter and being amused in a humorous way by something. It's essentially cognitive play. Well, you might be wondering, what does all this stuff have in common, right? Why have I now talked about creativity and humor and play as though they're fundamentally interlinked? Well, the research suggests actually that they are. So these are the definitions that we use and kind of accept in the field for each of these. So creativity is a novel, unexpected, and yet effective and appropriate use of some object or action. So when you think about, grabbing the PVC pipe and the towels, right, in a completely novel and innovative way, and then going out and using that as a Q-tip to clean the ears of a statue that's out there in the middle of the playa. It's novel. It just kind of came out of nowhere, but it was entirely appropriate, right? It just makes sense that you would grab a Q-tip and clean the dusty ears of this enormous head. So that's the defining feature of creativity. What's humor? Humor is a cognitive shift where you get set up for something with a conceptual frame, a way of thinking about something. Maybe it's a word, maybe it's an object, maybe it's a situation, and you think about it for one perspective. But what the punchline does is flip your shift, right? It flips your cognitive frame, it flips your perspective. So now you're thinking about the same thing in a completely different way. So here's a joke that I like to tell, with apologies to any lawyers who happen to be present, right? What's the best way to keep a lawyer from drowning? Shoot him before he hits the water. Okay. All right. I'm seeing a few people laugh. Again, apologies to any lawyers in the group. What do I mean by frame shift? Okay. So the setup makes you think you're trying to save the lawyer's life, right? And then the punchline says, no, you just want to kill him in a different way. Okay. Lots of friends who are lawyers, but that is a very simple example of the way that humor tends to work. And it's not always a literal joke, but it does pretty much always involve that kind of cognitive frame shift. Finally, play has been defined by developmentalists as exploring alternative actions, combinations, and sequences of actions or ideas when it's cognitive play in a safe environment with minimal consequences to see what'll happen. And when you look at play in non-human animals, it looks kind of like fighting, and certainly fighting and predation are very consequential, right? But what play is doing is it's saying, yeah, but no one's actually attacking you. You're not actually trying to catch your dinner. You're just trying out a bunch of ways to do this physical aggression thing to see what's going to happen. And that, whether it is rough and tumble play or role-playing play, social play, or cognitive play, is a common feature that runs through all these forms of play. Well, what do they have in common? Whatever it is that you're doing, it's not expected. It's not scripted. It's not what you're supposed to do. It's not the intent, right? It's not the initial serious frame. It's unexpected. And yet it works. It fits. And ultimately, it feels fun. And those are the characteristics that bring us together. So what do they have in common? Well, arguably, the cognitive process that's involved here is this, the human mind's amazing ability to shift among different alternative conceptual interpretations of the same target. And we call this bistable perception. And you're probably familiar with the examples that you can see on the right here, right? That upper figure. Is that a vase? Is it two faces looking at each other? It's both, and you can flip back and forth pretty easily, right? The one on the bottom, is that a rabbit? Is a duck? It's kind of both. And you can't see them both at the same time, but you can go back and forth between what they look like. It's called bistable perception. And that's what I mean by alternative, but equally appropriate and accurate ways of seeing some target. What helps us to be in that state? Well, two things. If the situation feels safe, and if performance pressure, the pressure to be right, the pressure to have an effect such that if you don't have that effect, you've failed, right? The pressure to succeed, as long as that pressure is low, this feels like fun or funny, whichever term you want to use in that moment. And the resulting output is more likely to be creative. And I'm not going to throw examples of all the research that ties those things together at you right now, because I'm not sure that that's really the focus. But there is quite a bit of research increasingly showing that there is this triad of psychological states that facilitate each other and kind of all have this in common. I really want to highlight these two conditions, though, because these actually came up earlier as we were getting ready to talk, and that's already come up a couple times here. These criteria, the situation feels safe and pressure to perform is low, are really important. And even just during I'm not that long standing a burner, but even during the 15 years that, that I've been going out there, this feels like it's changed. Right now, it feels like pressure is on to be even bigger and even more elaborate and even more awe-inspiring and even more planned and professional every year that we get out there. And yet, I don't think that's fundamentally the thing that Burning Man is about as a precious and rare experience. I think this is actually closer, although I love all that stuff too. Don't get me wrong, I love me some awe, but I think losing this would, in pursuit of that, would really be sad. So taking that pressure off. The other thing is the importance of safety. And I have friends, we all have friends. Sometimes we are this person that decides that we're going to make someone else have fun. You can't make someone else have fun. Let's just take that off the table, right? You can be the fun, you can invite the fun, you can create an environment where fun is possible and encourage people to join you. But if that's not where people are and you try to force them to have fun, it's not safe anymore. And you've just tanked any chances of making this fun for them. A question came up earlier, like, what if someone's in a really bad mood, right? Give them a hug, right? Maybe this isn't the time to fuck with their head and expect them to have fun. What if you're in a bad mood? You know, maybe give yourself a hug and then decide whether you feel like putting on the costume with the silly pants. And if not, that's okay too. Right? The welcoming and acceptance that we all treasure about Burning Man and that sense of community and support has to include that it's okay not to be in this headspace sometimes too. But I'm hopeful that this presentation might have pointed a little bit of a light toward ways to be in that space, and then do with that as you will. To see and to give this a try, I've got one more. Oh, actually, sorry, before I move on, I forgot that I had this in here. So I was asked to talk a little bit about the neurocircuitry. And there's actually, I have to say, even as a psychologist and someone who's very comfortable with neuroscience, I often shy away from using brain pictures in talks like these, because there are times when it's like, you show people a picture of a brain and they turn theirs off. It's like, ooh, brains, right? You said brain, therefore we believe everything you say. However, there are times when finding out what regions, structures, circuits of the brain are active during a given task and differentiated from related tasks can actually be really insightful. So this is one of those examples. It's one study. It's not a huge study, but it was a really thoughtful and interesting one that I could find, and it's well done, where they put people into an fMRI scanner, and then they had them read a bunch of passages that involved words and shifts in the meaning of words that correspond to a joke, as I described it earlier. Sometimes those shifts were funny, and sometimes they were just sentences, right? The question is, what's different in the jokes versus the not jokes? And they found 3 areas that were more active in response to jokes than similarly structured sentences that were not funny. This is one of them. Oops. It's called the inferior frontal gyrus. And what's interesting about this is that this seems to be more active when we detect conflict. And the brain has to figure out how to resolve conflict, including those perceptual objects that can be interpreted in a couple different ways that I just showed you earlier, right? Wait, is it this, or is it this, or is it this, or is this? Wait, what do I do? Right? So it's a part of the brain that seems to become more active in different kinds of situations where you have a mental conflict going on. Second is the temporoparietal junction. And this is actually the other time when this region is really active is when we're taking someone else's perspective, when we're engaging in theory of mind. So it's another form of frame shifting, trying to understand where you're coming from right now with this and getting out of my space into where your headspace is. The third region was the dopaminergic reward circuit. Right? And this is a series of little structures that are all connected to each other through the neurotransmitter dopamine, including the ventral tegmental area, which is where the dopamine is manufactured, through the nucleus accumbens and up into some parts of the striatum and the frontal lobes. And there's a lot of complexity to what's going on in that circuit, but basically when it's active, we're more likely to be experiencing positive emotion. approach repetitive motivation. It's reinforcing. So when that's going, whatever we just did, we're likely to do it again. And it feels good. It feels rewarding and fun. Okay, so now I have one more task for you, and would encourage you to think about how to approach this with this mindset that we've just been talking about as an example of how easy it is to be fun. Go for it. 45 seconds. Actually, no, not 45 seconds. Never mind. Just start typing it into the chat and I'll vaguely keep an eye on the time. Ouch. Keep it coming. What else? Nice. All right. Well, I don't know, so that you know what I'm laughing at, the attach half stash his mustache back on his face. All right. So thanks, everybody. I hope that was fun. What I love about that and what I want to encourage is using tasks as simple as this to rediscover that headspace of, well, that's not what it's for, but let's try it anyway, as a tool for finding fun and finding creativity and finding play again.
Thank you so much, Lonnie. That was super interesting. And a couple things that I just, again, emerging themes from what everyone's talking about is again, back to this simplicity, keeping things simple. And especially when you mentioned about low pressure, last year after the burn, I got together with some friends, and, last year, as we all know, for many of us, was super hard. And they were just feeling so burned out. And when they were telling me all the things that they were trying to do, I was like, you're trying to do too much. That's why you didn't have any fun. Because you're, again, that pressure, kind of bigger, larger, more, which definitely I've seen as well in the past 10 years. So again, I think all of our jobs in a way is like to bring it back. Let's keep it simple. The other thing that I thought was just so interesting was this concept of safety. And that for me is the trash fence. I say, we can just push right up against that trash fence. That's our limit, so we even though there's like so much space out there, we still have that sense of kind of being hemmed in. And maybe that allows us to be more prankster-like, or to be kind of freer in our willingness to experience things. And again, that's my kind of vision of the safety of the playa. But I think as well that it's such an important point to make of what we're talking about with fun. Also the connection of humor with creativity as well. And that certainly comes out with Half Stash and with Rockstar Librarian, where, there's just so much humor and again, trying to make people laugh, bringing them out of their, their shells, if you will. So thank you very much for that great presentation. I know that I think we have another poll to come up for y'all to participate in. And then I'm going to ask all the panelists to be spotlighted. And just answer some questions and have a little bit more of a discussion. So here is our poll. How helpful was today's content? And you are going to answer that, and then we're going to get the results in a moment. The other thing, just other business, is that we do have a feedback form for our Campfire Talks, and we'd love for you to fill that out. We also have a volunteer form. If you are interested in volunteering for the Campfire Talks team, we are looking for a few new team members, and we'd love to hear from you. So that's also coming out in the chat. And again, we're all volunteers. So much of what happens out there and year round. Campfire Talks is a year-round project, started right before COVID. And, you know, it was a way for us to stay connected during COVID. And, but again, all volunteer power, and we do try to have fun. Do we have the results of that poll yet? There we go. Okay, thanks for your feedback around our whole question. So Puppy, if we can spotlight all of the panelists and chat mods, I'm not sure if we have any questions from the audience, but I do have a few questions. Half Stash, I wanted to ask you, you did talk about being grumpy sometimes, and I get grumpy out there on the playa too. And so starting with you, when you are grumpy or cranky, do you have any kind of strategies to pull you out of that grumpiness?
Let me show you my shirt that I'm wearing.
All right, let's.
So no matter how dark the times are or how dark I'm going through, I have found that humor is the only thing that helps me out in my life. And no matter how hard it is to still release some laughter is the purest form of therapy for my life specifically. So grumpiness sucks. I get migraines. The Playa last year really beat my ass. So I just try to still be compassionate for when somebody else is feeling the same way. But I push the limits every day, every conversation, and I apologize if I offend people, but it's just, I try to be transparent of who I am. And I try to have comedy always as my respite. And people that know me understand it, that I'm never trying to hurt their feelings. I really do love everybody. But humor is really what I try to find. And my crew understands that, and they can see when I'm grumpy, because if I haven't eaten, I will go off. I'm the most hangry person on the planet. I apologize to somebody I just yelled at recently for parking in a handicapped spot and the police came. I apologize. I just am a hangry person. So my crew understands, hand me a Snickers, and then I get on my way.
Yeah, and you know, that comes back. What's come up a lot in our Campfire Talks is the need for self-care. And one thing that we're going to be doing in our camp this year, which we hadn't really designated, but we're designating fluffers to just, yeah, I know it's, well, you know, helpers, let's just say. But people, like, sometimes there are people like during the build and they're tired, or we have a lot of international people, so they're jet lagged, and they're like, you know, I just can't like lift anything more. We're like, okay, here's a spray bottle. Why don't you go around, spray people? Like you say, here's the candy bars. So that can help with our, you know, to help with our needs. But it's just something that has come up again and again during the Campfire Talks, is this need for self-care. And that can absolutely help with our, you know, with our grumpiness and crankiness, maybe getting a little bit more sleep. And yeah, thanks. Anybody else have any ideas about handling when you're grumpy, when other people are grumpy? Humor is one idea. Kate or Lonnie, any thoughts about that?
I just think like water, electrolytes, sleep, clearly. Like, I mean, it's like the halt, you know, are you hungry? Like getting all you have to hit the basic needs. And it's really easy when it's super hot to forget if you haven't eaten because you're not hungry, but you have to be on that, or hydrated, particularly if anybody's getting to the elder ages, the water alone does not do the job out there. You really get your ass kicked a bit differently, and you need the electrolytes and the rest in a different way than maybe you did. Last year was a good example for me to really realize what I needed. And to give yourself that if you need to drink 2.5 gallons of water that first day to reset, and then you're able to get to your, like, you know, when you're, or the 5, whatever is your huge, I was drinking so much water that first day and I just gave into it and gave into the electrolytes, and then it all reset. But listen to your body, listen to what you need, and find that balance. And you can ask for help. That's why you have campmates. If you're like, I really need to trade a shift or do something, I'm really down. I'm going down. Like, we're here to help. That's what community is about. Your community in your camp, or if you're at some art piece and you like, wow, something, you know, people, we're all there to be together and to be supportive. So
again, it kind of comes to that pressure too. I think we feel a lot under pressure that we're supposed to be providing this fun, and then we are not feeling fun. And I love that idea of giving yourself a hug, and also recognizing sometimes people just aren't wanting to have fun right then. I mean, we can try to help them, but I think a hug sometimes is better, just to recognize that someone maybe is not having a great time at that moment, and just getting that recognition and being seen sometimes can just totally shift it for somebody, right?
This gets to that space of, you know, there are so many amazing things about being out on the playa, and we don't have to exemplify all of them all of the time, nor can we. And so, you know, there's a comment in the chat from Mike Weissman about, you know, last year was rough. It was rough for a lot of people. A number of my campmates are not coming back this year because they just had a really hard time, decided to take a year off. And those are the kinds of circumstances, which is, we all have different situations in which I'm not feeling fun right now. I'm just not in that. And maybe that's a time to, rather than pushing the need to be fun and making it a point of pressure, finding a way to appreciate something else about this experience, right? The community, the savoring the sense of self-sufficiency, simply surviving out there, right, under those kinds of conditions is pretty extraordinary. And the extent to which we take care of each other in that situation, that is a gift, even if not every minute was a party that year, right? And so taking the pressure off to have fun all the time is part of what helps us to have fun. Right?
Yeah, and setting our expectations too. I think that's, you know, every time when we have new people in our camp, I always say, you know, you're probably going to have a really hard, at least one day. I mean, for the first years for me, I always had one day where I just really had to face myself. I was like, ugh. So, you know, just understanding that, you know, as much as we want to have that fun, that, you know, there is a flip side. And I know that this Campfire Talk is about fun, but I think, again, if we put too much pressure on ourselves to have fun all the time, it could backfire. So I think we have a couple of questions from the chat. So is one of our chat moderators gonna unmute and ask a question to our panelists?
So one of the questions we got was, what are your thoughts of the Dusty Throwdown prank from last year, as well as the Daft Punk pranks of Daft Punk playing in the Playa, in the deep Playa?
This is fun because that's not the first time. So it was not a unique prank where somebody submitted something to the guide that wasn't true. So it wasn't a unique prank. However, you know, it was something I did notice, and it was a new camp. And I actually, when I was out there early, I went to try to find them just to say, hey, what's up? Because I had actually had some backlash from the default world people from those entities, shall we say, and I don't throw my Burning Man people under the bus, but I was like, hey, just to check in with you, what's going on? And couldn't find the camp because of course it wasn't there, but it was like, there's no way to have a conversation at Burning Man. But, and we had a lovely conversation afterwards. You know, there's this balance between trying to have integrity and also be the cacophony of that is Burning Man. And I really honor and respect the work that the camps do that want to be in the guide and wanting to have that have some integrity. So it's on the camps to be submitting what is truthful. That's not on me to fact check per se, because that would be insanity. However, I just, we want to keep it mindful. Is this going to be a useful tool? If everybody did a prank, probably not. And maybe then it'd be time for it to not be a guide anymore. I don't have any wherewithal there. It's a gift that got out of hand that people really, really value, and they re-gift and repurpose it. And I've seen people make little pocketbook things. And then, so I don't want to supersede somebody else's joy because of something I've created that then they're building out to be something else. But it's just part of that, it's going to happen. And I wasn't offended at all. I just really found it really interesting. The backstory that people didn't know is that there was conversations happening directly to me that I was like, hey, I'm just the messenger.
So what was it? I'm not familiar with what the throwdown.
Oh, the throwdown. Well, somebody had submitted a fake camp and said that Sigur Rós and some other highly well-known names were going to be playing there in the middle of the town. And sometimes that happens, actually. There will be a person that will play a very small camp, and it can happen, So, and that didn't exist, and a whole ton of people filled up the, 830 and F or wherever it was at with a ton of bikes and I don't know what kind of crappy music they were playing, crappy meaning just played off of radio or something, I don't know. And people were looking and seeking. So, and people were having a good time being pranked for that, But the thing is that sometimes those things are true, and you get the magic of that weird, mysterious moment of only being one of 30 people who saw X play. So you never know the mysteries of
Right. Great. Thanks.
So yeah, I wasn't offended by it. I had a great conversation back and forth with the prankster who put that together. And it's, the guide is what you guys want it to be and want to make it. I'm just the facilitator and aggregator of data. So
Perfect.
I have fun with it too.
Lonnie, you have your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. So I'm pro prank. She got a really bad reputation in school for doing pranks. I like them. I find them entertaining. But I think in this conversation, it's really important to make a distinction between us doing something that's fun for us at other people's expense and creating something that is actually likely to be fun for them. This sounds like a situation that was probably hilarious to the people who did it, and watching the results was probably super fun for the people who did it. But for the people who were trying to find this, it was probably really irritating, at least a lot of the time. And for those who could go, just gonna laugh it off and say, all right, you got me, that's great. But it does put the obligation on someone else to entertain you. That's sociopathy. Sorry, that's treating other people like things for your entertainment. I'm not a super big fan of that in general, but that's really different, John Halfstash, from what you do, right? You're creating an environment where people are invited to play in this space, understanding that part of playing is taking some risks. That's a really different situation to me. You're creating a playground and inviting people in. That is completely different to me from doing something where other people are the toys and you don't really care how they're experiencing it. So that I think it's helpful to draw that distinction here.
Interesting. Halfstash, hand up.
The Bureau of Misinformation is one of the more incredible camps because of all of the quests that I've heard people go on. And one of my dearest friends got sent on 3 different trips from the same people, and then came back to camp and said, I had to go all the way out here for Wi-Fi, then over there. And he kept going back to the misinformation camp. I love you, Mike, but he kept going back to the misinformation place, getting continued wrong information. And he hates that camp. But that story warms my soul. And I understand, I'm learning a lot right now from this conversation, because I was thinking about doing a prank listing. I guess I won't make them go to a camp and make people go and infiltrate a camp, but open space will be safe. But you're right, you're absolutely right. we want to have the interaction at everybody's expense, and then to reward it if we are laughing at them. If we are making them the joke, we're going to reward them and have a great laugh out of it, so we're understanding each other for the most part.
Yeah, laugh with people, not at people is one of the comments in the chat. Oh, wow. Such an interesting conversation. Such a deeper dive than I could have ever imagined, you know, on this topic. So thanks for, you know, all of that feedback. Are there any other questions, Luis?
Yeah, we actually have one directed towards Half Stash. Are we going to see a live stash shave?
If you are at my camp right when I pull in, that's when the live stash celebration happens. I have to get through the driving, you know, the logistics part of, you know, not looking like a circus freak. And then when I'm at my circus, we do a live shave off out there when I get welcome to camp. But I actually grew this whole stash today. I have to shave every morning. I shaved this part before the thing, and this thing just pops right out.
Well, but wait, we need that paper clip to put it back on. Any other questions, Luis? Is that it for our questions? Panelists, any other final comments that you want to make? Again, ways that we can just, you know, or summaries or just any other nuggets of information that you'd like to share.
I've got an easy one. This is the theme this year is extremely inviting. So we all can go costume crazy and have animal fun laughter. So I encourage everybody to go simple just because we've got a great theme to kind of encourage laughter across the boards. I would love to see a herd of cows and cattlemen. It'd be just fantastic. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yes, yes, me too. Yes. Any other comments from our panelists? Thank you, everybody. So thank you for being here. We do have our feedback form, if you could fill that out, volunteer form. And yes, there is a Discord under Burner Network. I think we put the link in there for an invitation. Under Burner Network, there is a Discord channel for camp organizers to have further conversations about this and everything else. And this is our season finale of Campfire Talks. We'll be coming back again starting in November, and our first Campfire Talk, we don't have a date yet, but we will be talking about lessons learned. We did this last year already. Just the things that we learned on the Playa in 2022. We'll be talking about that again in 2023. If you're interested in being a panelist, just you know, hit us up. We actually ask that in the feedback form, and we actually do look at that feedback form. So really appreciate you filling that out when you have a chance. And again, thank you to our panelists, John Halfstash and Lonnie and Kate, Rockstar Librarian, for spending this time and organizing all of your information, slides, etc. And just appreciate your participation. Thanks to our participants, and it wouldn't be nearly as much fun without everybody here together. So we'll see you on the Playa, and I'm looking forward to finding all of you, and we'll see you next season for our season 4 of Campfire Talks. Thanks to our team once again, Camp Network team, Larry, Luis, regular, and me as your host. And Puppy, our tech mod, right? I knew I was forgetting somebody, PETA and Puppy. All right, so thanks everybody. See y'all later. Bye. Bye-bye.